check one.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, January 23rd, 2024. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today is the New Hampshire primary for the Republicans anyways. It's sort of the Democrats. Trump's lead widens in the wake of DeSantis' campaign's heel turn.
Yeah.
Yep.
Got it. Sorry.
We'll talk a bit about that. And there are 4 justices on the Supreme Court who deny the existence of the supremacy clause in the Constitution, but 5 who find that the DHS can pull down Texas razor wire. 21 Israeli soldiers killed as they attempt to blow up an apartment building in a Gazan refugee camp. UN say more than 500,000 people, 500,000 people, face catastrophic hunger in Gaza. US and UK attack 8 sites in Yemen, or in Houthi-controlled Yemen. White House marks the 51st anniversary of Roe by expanding access to contraception. California state faculty reach a deal on day 1 of their strike. 23 universities faculty. Southwest Pilots Union agreed to a contract raising their pay by 50%, and Sean Fain calls for a May 2028 general strike. Meanwhile, the Senate near a deal on attacking immigrants in exchange for supplemental war aid. Sanders introduces a bill to peg corporate tax rates to CEO to worker pay gaps. IRS begins trials of a free tax filing system. Meanwhile, the FTC lodges a complaint against TurboTax for its false advertising about its supposedly free tax system.
That's been all over the place recently.
All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is
Tuesday.
Words of Emma Vigran. Well, I was just going to set you up to tee that up.
Is there supposed to be a federal tax filing program this year?
Yeah.
They've just rolled out the pilot, and actually New York is one of the, I think it's 8 states that has the program. We'll talk about that briefly, but that was mandated under the Inflation Reduction Act, where the IRS got that funding. Part of it was mandating roll out this free thing that has been very difficult to get for years because, I'll just give you a hint. I wasn't going to go into this now, but since we're here, this is what the response was. I mean, there's some critics of this, so just to be fair. A spokeswoman for Intuit criticized the direct file project as a half-baked solution and a waste of taxpayer money.
Sure.
No one's getting rich off this.
The direct file scheme is a solution in search of a problem. she
The
said.
problem is people are being forced to pay
How
to
clueless.
file their taxes.
Everyone hates you. You have no idea.
Intuit makes the TurboTax preparation
Sure.
software. So,
Yeah.
there you go.
I mean, an
thought that was-
NFL divisional game this weekend was being sponsored by Intuit TurboTax.
Oh my
That's how I really came to the forefront of my mind. I was like, damn, I got to file my taxes. Wait, why is this being advertised on an NFL broadcast?
Because it's a
Money-making scheme.
multi-billion-dollar business.
Truly.
And to have taxpayers do it directly for free, I mean, Republicans have always been against this, because it cuts into corporate profits, but B, it makes the relationship with the IRS less sort of like mystified and whatnot. And all of a sudden, your refund doesn't come from TurboTax. Your refund comes from the IRS. And once it becomes an easy thing to do, the IRS can put those resources into auditing
Rich people.
And so there's a lot that's good with that.
It's just
Or
incredible.
is it authoritarianism?
Yeah.
Is this Gestapo? I don't know.
Right, exactly.
It's
hard to know.
incredible how many middlemen we've created in this society just so people can get rich,
That's
that's neoliberalism.
I met somebody who
Healthcare.
I should say that. Well, I met somebody who works for a prescription benefits manager, and they're like, "Yeah, it's been a little bit tough because of the Medicare, those 10 drugs." And I'm like, "Oh, good. What do you guys do?" Like, what do you guys do? And all it is really, it's total rent seeking. They have the money to be a big buyer in the marketplace where there wasn't a big buyer before. And so they just basically create sort of mini monopsonies where they can demand kickbacks because they buy so much of it. They demand kickbacks to who they kick it out to. It's just bizarre.
But God forbid Medicare can participate in that marketplace. God forbid.
Medicare could just immediately wipe the whole thing out, and if it wanted to. I mean, there's no reason why we need to have those, but it's just a.
But they like the
insertion.
money.
But let's get to this. The Democratic primary in New Hampshire today will not count. There are no electoral votes. The Democratic National Committee had said a couple of years ago, we want to change the order of the primaries. And New Hampshire said, no, we want to have it now. And this happens from year to year. I think when Obama ran, there were 2 states that didn't have primaries. And so Joe Biden is not on the ballot. There are, however, I think 16 Democratic names on the ballot. There is a writing campaign by the New Hampshire Democrats who are apparently happy to have the yoke of the National Democratic Party off their back so they can run a good campaign for Joe Biden as a writing candidate. Also, people are writing in ceasefire now, I think it is, which I think would be an encouraging thing to do. Look, if the Democratic Party in New Hampshire thinks it's a good thing to put in Joe Biden's name because of what impact it'll have, I don't know if they're right or wrong. There's no reason to think that putting in ceasefire now also wouldn't be a good thing. We'll get more into that maybe later, but latest tracking poll out of New Hampshire shows that Trump gained 3 percentage points. It's actually the final tracking poll, giving him a 60%, 38% edge over Haley. He gained those 3 points theoretically in the wake of Ron DeSantis stepping gingerly off the stage of the Republican primary. About 1% of those surveyed chose someone else. 1% were undecided, and 1% refused to answer out of, I guess, what was left of DeSantis's 6% there. But Nikki Haley, she's putting on, she's giving it the old. I don't know.
The old college
America's
try.
not racist. Try.
Yeah.
And here she is. We should say, coming out of Iowa, 43% of Nikki Haley voters said that they would refuse to vote for Donald Trump. But watch this now.
And then Donald Trump.
Well, no. And it's
pause it. I should say you can tell. Keep that image up there. You could tell they're up in New Hampshire because of the way.
The
Ducey and Kilmeade are dressing.
What is Kilmeade wearing?
Well, first of all, I mean, they have the state of New Hampshire flag behind them, so that's a bit of a giveaway, but it's also rustic up there.
It's so rustic.
They're so
and
down to
also,
earth.
But look at the three-quarter zip up.
Oh, yeah. That's Vineyard Vines. I mean, that is, or something. Actually, it's probably more expensive than that. But that's New England preppy. That's kind of what
I've
it
never
is.
seen something like that.
Yeah.
Believe me, we didn't quite see that in Worcester. There was a little bit of that, but
You would have gotten beat up.
oh my God.
Out on the campaign trail, you have said, and you reflect some of the polls that show you would beat Joe Biden by a larger margin even than Donald Trump.
Well, no, and as much as y'all like to sit there and say Trump's going to have this, the truth is you're not acknowledging that 70% of Americans don't want a Trump-Biden rematch. Both Trump and Biden, their disapproval numbers are through the roof, and y'all have yet to acknowledge that. And so what I'll tell you is, look, normal people don't look at what the political elites are saying. Normal people are not listening to what the media is saying. Normal people are saying, we want somebody that can go 8 years, that's going to stop the wasteful spending of Republicans and Democrats. We want someone that's going to get our kids back on track. We want someone that's going to secure the border.
Pause it for one
And
second.
here-
Will you pause it for 1 second? Just go back a little bit because there's two things that really strike me. One, Nikki Haley is not a normal person.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean,
Boeing
she's
executive.
not a normal person. Not a normal person. But also, it's really enjoyable to watch how impatient Brian Kilmeade is throughout this thing. At one point, like, you can hear him go, and he's like looking around. He's annoyed. He's annoyed.
He's always annoyed.
He's going to get in trouble from Trump for having Haley on
Yeah.
there. So, like, why am I the one who has to sit next to her?
And Ainsley Earhardt, girlfriend of Sean Hannity, who's Trump's like number one water boy
Consigliere.
in media. Yeah.
somebody that can go 8 years, that's going to stop the wasteful spending of Republicans and Democrats. We want someone that's going to get our kids back on track. We want someone that's going to secure the border. And here, Trump has lied on TV and spent millions saying I want to cut Social Security, which I never said I was.
I saw that ad yesterday.
Yeah, but you guys haven't talked about it. He said I was going to cut Social Security. I never said I was going to do it. He said I didn't want to secure the border.
You're going to raise the Social Security age because for the 20-somethings now, right?
What did I say? I said anybody in the system, we're not going to touch them. Those new coming into the system in the 20s, we're going to go and start reflecting life expectancy. That's different than going on TV and saying I'm going to cut Social Security by 87%.
The facts are, and I hear you, but the facts are, and it's hard when you're doing these shows. We try to cover it all, but we only have X amount of time. So we definitely are doing our best to be accurate and give the facts. The facts are that Donald Trump beat you by 30 points in Iowa. Now in New Hampshire, the facts are that you were down in the polls. These are the polls. We know polls can be wrong. If you don't win today, do you go on to South Carolina? And I'm from South Carolina, and we love you there. We love Tim Scott there, but Donald Trump is also loved there. You don't want to go into your state and lose that state if you stay in the race, because we'd love to see you in some other capacity down the road. What is your response to that? Do you get out if you lose today?
No, I don't get out if I lose today. I mean, first of all, again, I'm going to say this. We've had 56,000 people vote for Donald Trump, and you're going to say that's what the country wants? That's not what the country wants. We're going to have New Hampshire vote today. They deserve to have the power of their voice said. I've won South Carolina twice. Do they support Trump? Of course they do. I voted for Trump twice. I think he was the right president at the right time. I don't think he's the right president going forward. There's a difference between support and where you want our country to go. I'm going to fight just as hard in South Carolina as I did before.
But do you worry, the Iowa polls were right. The distance was about what the polls were. Right now, you're down double digits in probably the last three major polls. And in South Carolina, I think you're down 40 or 50 points.
Oops.
So you think those polls are that dramatically wrong and you can make up that difference?
Well,
in a
I'm
matter of
not
weeks?
down 40 or 50 points in South Carolina. I think we need to have a current poll in South Carolina. But I'll also tell you this. When I ran for governor, I ran against an attorney general, lieutenant governor, and a popular congressman.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked it and fought for it and earned it. I'm going to go into South Carolina and do the same thing. I take nothing for
So there's
granted.
no scenario where it stops tonight.
Of course not.
They
We've already
are
made
begging
our ad
her.
Yeah, how many? You
I mean,
$4 million in ads?
We've put in an ad buy. I don't know how much it is, but it's strong. We saved our money. I hoarded money all the way through. We stayed in garden inns and residence inns. We were the only one that flew commercial because I wanted to make sure we could run through the tape on this. I'm going to fight no matter what. I don't care how much y'all want to coronate Donald Trump.
You
At the end
fly
of the day, that's
commercial.
not
I
what
don't think
Americans
voters want
want.
somebody who
That's
flies
gross.
commercial.
I like the admission where Ainsley Earhart there says, we'd like to see you in some other capacity. Wink, wink.
It's like an intervention.
Don't you dare burn these bridges.
Yeah.
You know that I've got direct line to
Yeah.
Sean's got direct line to the big
That's
boss.
exactly what's going on there. Is that like, I think it's probably best that you get out after this.
Right.
The difference between, watching Barack Obama call the Democratic field and say, it's time for you to get out for Joe Biden. We're just watching that actually play out on camera via the Fox and Friends, essentially delivering the message.
Yeah.
It's time for you to go.
And Nikki went into that interview pretty defensive. Like, they were like, hey, whoa. Trump can criticize Fox News and we'll just take it. But when it's coming from you, that's not something we're going to stand for.
There's a lot of Koch brothers money behind her, so we'll see. But
But she didn't seem that confident. She's like, it was very defensive.
Oh, yeah.
There's just a tiny bit more of kill me.
Matter what. I don't care how much y'all want to coronate Donald Trump. At the end of the day, that's not what Americans want. Americans want a choice. And we're going to give them that choice.
Saying coronate, lie, not tell the truth. What do you say on the couch? I'm really wondering why you think we're the enemy.
Because I've looked at the media. Look at the media saying, oh, this is Donald Trump's to have. Look at the political class all coalescing and saying everybody needs to get out. That's not democracy. That's not who we are. Who we are is, when have we ever had down to two people in New Hampshire and you say, oh, it's over? We don't do that. South Carolina is an amazing state when it comes to picking president.
3 states really could choose an election for the entire country?
I mean, it's
what is going on there?
That's amazing.
Ames is getting a hallmark. A little bit.
She was, I mean, I don't
enjoy
think,
her last time on that.
Exactly.
I like her. I like her saying that, look, we tried to cover everything here. It's really tough. I'm looking from January 20th, 2024. Oscar Mayer Wienermobile stops at Fox Square. Oscar Mayer hot doggers talked. Yeah. So,
what are they going to do? Not cover that?
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know. You're going to leave the Wienermobile not covered?
You need to cover that. We've got other news to get to. I just want one more point about that. Is that 43% of Nikki Haley voters coming out of the Iowa caucuses said that they would not vote for Trump. And it's quite clear, and maybe we'll talk about this in later today. The strategy of the Biden administration is definitely it's us or Trump. I mean, it's a lesser of two evils argument, which is a relatively strong argument, and could theoretically, I don't know, I go back and forth on this, theoretically be more resonant than it was even in 2020, because Trump's not going to win back these voters. Like this time around, when they say, I'm not going to come home to the Republican nominee, I think you could take them more seriously. It's probably a smaller number than it was in 2016, let's say, but I don't know. We'll see. Got a couple of sponsors for today's program. Oh, this is great. I don't know that I've done that well with it, but 1 in 5 Americans learn a new language on their bucket list, which is actually, I'm sort of surprised by that.
Wow.
I would have thought it would have been a little bit smaller, but if it's you can make 2024 the year to finally check that off the list with Babbel. Babbel is super easy to use, and it's obviously it's an app. You can do it on your computer. You can do it on everything, but it really works on phrases that you will use in conversation. Babbel has a speech recognition technology that helps you to improve your pronunciation and accent. Things have really improved in this whole this is like AI and speech recognition has really improved this. In 2024, you can use Babbel. It is a science-backed language learning app that honestly works. You don't have to pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors. You don't have to waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Babbel's got a quick 10-minute lesson. They're all about 10 minutes. That are designed by over 150 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. Babbel is designed by real people for real conversations. And it's all stuff that gets you off the ground ordering food, looking for direction. I mean, all of these things that like you might have like, back in the day in a guidebook, but you can also take the next step within the context of a conversation. And it really is effective. And having small 10-minute lessons means that you can fit them in different points throughout the day. Babbel's tips and tools, they're approachable, they're accessible, and like I say, they're rooted in real-life situations. Studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and others continue to prove that Babbel is better. One study found that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a full semester at college. And I can assure you, significantly less expensive.
For sure.
Babbel has over 10 million subscribers sold, plus all of Babbel's 14 language courses are backed by their 20-day money-back guarantee. You can get that 15 hours in easy over the course of 20 days. Let's see how it works. Here's a special limited time deal for our listeners. Right now, get 55% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/majority. Get 55% off at babbel.com/majority. That's spelled BABBEL.com/majority. Rules and restrictions may apply. Also, my favorite sponsor, with all due respect to all the other sponsors, Sunset Lake Sebede has a new product. Oh shoot, I brought you guys back a bottle.
Oh really?
Yes, it's sitting on the couch. To be fair, I got it when I was leaving, and but I used it last night. It was fantastic.
Is it a sleep one?
It is a sleep one. Yes. Good Night CBD oil is a melatonin-free nighttime CBD oil option. Sebede. Oh, Sebede option. Contains 1,200 milligrams of full spectrum Sebede and 600 milligrams of Sebean, which is, I haven't practiced how to say that in such a way, but I think that's a different cannabinoid, as they say. It's mint flavored, so it doesn't interfere with your nighttime brushing. You take it like 30 minutes, maybe an hour before you go to bed.
Tincture.
You drop it under your tongue, and last night, I'll tell you something. It worked. Now, I fell asleep very nicely, and I was sleeping very soundly. This is what it does not work for. If your kid is vomiting and they wake you up, this tincture will not help you.
I'm sorry, Saul.
You should just know.
It's all my fault.
No, it isn't. It's total coincidence, honestly.
Oh.
So Sunset Lake has their new Goodnight Sebede oil. Gentle 2-to-1 blend of Sebede and Sebean, designed to help you go to bed without the use of melatonin. Like I say, these are great. This may be part of my new go-to. I like to mix it up over the course of a week. Right now, you can save 35% on all Sunset Lake Sebede tinctures, even tinctures for your pets.
Wow.
Use the code tincture at checkout. Don't suffer another restless night. Check this out, honestly. Visit sunsetlakesebede.com. Use the code tincture, TINCTURE, at checkout. You will save 35% of all tinctures. Don't wait. The sale ends January 25th at midnight. So you got 2 more days of this. Check it out. Also, before we get back to the news, I just want to give a shofar. Today is longtime listener Judge Matthew, nay Lawyer Matthew. It's his birthday today. Yep.
Happy birthday.
Yep, there is. Happy birthday to him. All right. Let's get back into this. Where did we go? Oh, yeah. There is let's play this clip of Sean Fain. I think this is going to be a big deal. I suppose it's arguable, but this labor sort of resurgence that we've seen over the past couple of years. I mean, it's been coming. We've talked about this many times with different writers and reporters and labor officials, that it's been growing over the past decade. really, in the wake of Occupy and more. And certainly COVID, I don't think is 100% responsible for it, but is significant. It has a significant impact on this.
I mean, the organizers that we've had and the the workers that we've had on that have been organizing have mentioned it almost always when we talk.
Without a doubt. I mean, it's impossible that it didn't have a big influence. But people got to remember that you had the Red State Revolt, the teachers, but this is spread wider to teachers. And certainly COVID sort of laid a lot of things bare. But Sean Fain has taken the bull by the horn. It doesn't necessarily, I mean, you could argue that COVID may have helped a lot of these sort of like union reform movements, but also this has been growing. And much of that developed in that 8 years that Barack Obama was failing to meet the standards that Democrats were holding him to on that accord. He came in promising he was going to put his soft shoes on, and then we saw strikes out in Madison, Wisconsin, and he didn't show. And
all the while, by the way, this was the wake of the economic collapse where UAW workers in particular were asked to make significant cuts to eat things like cost of living adjustment, which is the number one way that they get pay raises. And there were a lot of promises made by CEOs, and the Democrats did nothing about it until this moment.
Yep.
I mean, until they took the bull by the horns, as you say.
So Fain alluded to this when they signed their contract, but they had the contract come up for renegotiation in May of 2028. And he wants the rest of the union movement to peg their contracts to the similar day. And here he is talking about it at the UAW conference just yesterday. Good.
Something that's not talked about a lot, but it's very significant, is we set a new contract deadline for May the 1st, 2028, May Day, International Solidarity Day. We did this for two reasons. I've always thought in my walk as a union rep that September was the worst time in the world to be going out on strike because sales start lagging when we get into the winter months. May made a hell of a lot more sense, but it also made sense to do it in a unified approach. We got to get back to the days, we got to pay for our sins of the past. Back in 1980, when Reagan at the time fired the PATCO workers, everyone in this country should have stood up and walked the hell out. We missed the opportunity then, but we're not going to miss it in 2028. That's the plan. We want a general strike. We want everybody walking out, just like they do in other countries.
This is the first time I can remember. Maybe it happened back in the 70s and 80s. I don't recall it, but this is the first time I can remember where you had a major union leader saying the words general strike.
Oh,
and not, I mean, basically calling for one.
I mean, this has got to be hearkening back to pre-Taft-Hartley days. Like, we're talking that kind of, I mean, this is the kind of action that Taft-Hartley was designed, right? To make illegal.
Well, and here's the thing is that you cannot, the labor law in this country prevents unions from doing solidarity strikes across industries. However, if your contracts are coming up at those times, and these are, and you come out of contract in June of 2028.
Yeah,
it's a totally different ballgame. And so this is good to see. And we had other union news. We had spoken, I think, to one of the California State faculty, hadn't we?
I believe so.
And they had planned a 5-day strike that was supposed to go on this week. And after 1 day of striking, there's 23 colleges, campuses, I should say, of the California State University system, representing about 29,000 professors, lecturers, counselors, librarians, coaches. After day one, the strike was settled. It includes higher salary floors for the lowest paid workers, safer workplaces, expansion of parental leave, and union leaders say the agreement includes a 5% salary increase retroactive to July 1, among other benefits. So that's a good sign that that it took them one day until they agreed on that. Pilots at Southwest approved a contract that will raise their pay rates by nearly 50% by 2028.
Do we know when that contract ends?
That's a good question. Don't know. But maybe it ends in 2028. The Southwest Airlines Pilot Association, 11,000 pilots ratified the agreement from a with a 93% to 7% margin. And that agreement followed more than 3 years of bargaining, which you'll recall in 2022, and Southwest Airlines is now being fined for this. They had inadequate staffing. Basically what happened, and this is again why we need to fully regulate the airlines industry again. But basically what happened, and this happened with a lot of outfits essentially during COVID, and to some extent was also responsible for why we had the inflation that we did, is these companies cut back dramatically during COVID, and then did not have the capacity to hire as many people as they needed when everything just sort of switched back on. And they tried to basically stretch the existing pilot schedule in Southwest, and the system just broke because people just can't function that way. So good for the Southwest pilots. They just won a big contract. Quickly, the Senate is nearing a deal. They really want to get that supplemental done. It's unclear whether the deal will pass the House, because the issue is always going to be, is it enough for the conservatives, and can Mike Johnson afford to pass anything with just Democratic support? Because it's, or I should say, that includes Democratic support.
Because they could get
rid of him any minute.
Kevin McCarthy him.
The other thing to note is there are days where it is anticipated now that Democrats will be in the majority in the chambers, because the Republicans refused to re-up the proxy voting that came in during COVID. And they have too many of their old guys out sick at any given time. Now, apparently, there was a piece just yesterday, I think it was in the Times or the Washington Post, where I think Hoyer said, if they do this multiple times, we just may go in and vote to overthrow the chair. The speaker, because all it takes is one person to raise the vote. And if we're there in the majority, but I guess from my perspective is like, why are you waiting for it to happen multiple times?
Well, they're probably not going to do it, is the point. They're just threatening to do so. If they really wanted to, they might, right? I mean, I guess what would force their hand is if we actually are approaching a government shutdown with the two-tiered kind of funding systems that they set up.
It could also be quite a move if they want to actually get some legislation passed, because the Republicans haven't passed anything. And even this tax deal that is a big giveaway to corporate taxes, that does raise about 500,000 kids out of poverty in an expansion of the child tax credit. And let me just say something. I saw somebody dumb on Twitter say something about this. The child tax credit is not a deduction. It is a payment. In my world, and in normal people's world, you would call it a government payment.
Right.
But because we are so allergic to the idea of government giving support directly, we call it a tax credit. In other words, it's a tax credit as opposed to a tax debit. Tax debit is you pay.
Yeah.
Tax credit is it's a reverse tax. It's just the nomenclature. And it would raise the amount of payments that we provide to some American families with kids. But this immigration deal is it's garbage. Again, it's just basically the Democrats capitulating to this as a way of, I mean, I guess ultimately to get to be able to say that they're cracking down on immigration in some fashion, and to get the supplemental stuff. But it essentially would limit the number of people who are granted parole. And parole is when an immigrant comes into this country and there is a determination that must be made as to whether their asylum claims are legitimate. They're allowed to go out if they have family to and can prove that they're going to be staying with that family and get a job. They're allowed to go get a job and work.
Yeah.
So that we don't have to expend resources on caring for these people while they are granted their statutorily mandated processing.
Which is, by the way, something we should be expanding. We should be expanding the ability for asylum seekers to go and like be in the system and then process them in a way, as opposed to just funneling people.
Well, what if prison companies could make money caging them instead?
Exactly. This parole authority has been around for probably 75 years. It's basically just
longer than ICE.
Longer than ICE, much longer. It's just a way of giving migrants essentially a temporary work and live card here.
Right.
Biden administration, in a separate thing, paroled roughly 1 million migrants under things like the temporary protection status from places like Haiti, Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua. Republicans also are looking for limits on that program. According to data compiled by the Transactional Records Access Clearinghouse and Syracuse University, the use of parole authority to allow otherwise inadmissible migrants into the United States is also ballooned under the Biden administration, though the percentage of those admitted is roughly comparable to intake figures under Barack Obama during the early part of the Trump administration. So in other words, percentage-wise, we've been issuing parole at the same way that we've been doing traditionally over the past decade or so. Just the number of migrants who came in the wake of COVID looking for asylum shot up because we had basically closed the doors.
Title 42 had ended.
Exactly.
I mean, right. But this is why the Democrats, again, are idiotic for continuing to capitulate to this, because this is the claim that Republicans make every single time. When there's a border crackdown, there's kind of a freeze or a slowdown, and then eventually things start to pick back up, and then they claim again that there's a crisis on the border, time for another crackdown.
Well, they don't want to make this deal. That's the thing, is that the Republicans in the House don't want to make this deal because they've said they don't want to give Joe Biden a win, as it were. I don't know that it's a policy win as much as it is maybe for him a political win to strike any type of deal, because that's the nature of our politics. But we'll keep an eye on that. That may, if it passes the Senate, it's going to put a lot of pressure on Mike Johnson. So we'll see about that. Bernie Sanders has, like I said, introduced a bill that would peg the corporate tax rate to a corporation's not having a 50-to-1 ratio between their CEO pay and their worker pay. It would impose tax penalties, but we'll get into that more. Let's turn to what's happening in Gaza. 21 Israeli soldiers killed. But first off, if you knew that there were hundreds of Palestinian civilians dying on a daily basis, I mean, first off, let's just put it this way. In the media, and this is what I find sort of fascinating, I have had arguments with people who are like, why is there so much attention on Israel? And I'm like, well, I mean, I can tell you why I pay attention to it, because there's no other country I raised money to grow trees in as a kid.
Yeah.
Just to starters.
But
right?
for politics and for young people in particular, it's the fact that Israel is the top recipient of our military aid, for example, and the entire public is being gaslit every single day about the atrocities happening there.
And also, like, what other country is spending tens of millions of dollars each election cycle to go after progressive candidates? You know, like, what other countries like sort of lobby is doing that? There is, I don't know.
It's more discreet if there's anything.
It's significantly more discreet.
And I'm sorry, the scale of the atrocities that are committed by our government in like the span of a short, or at least with our money by the Israeli government with our sanctioning in this short period of time is unprecedented. That's why this attention is on Gaza.
And I would also add, like, we would never expect to see 21 Hamas fighters killed today. Like, does anybody even have an idea of how many Hamas fighters are die a day? Like, I'm not saying like this is a terrible concern of mine, but you can't look at the news today without seeing that headline about 21 Israeli soldiers killed in the biggest day of Israeli soldier death. And then it turns out that they were in a building in Gaza, that they were planting explosives to do a controlled demolition because they want to make sure that there's nothing standing for, certain number of distance. I don't know if it's a half a mile or a mile or 2 miles from the border with Israel. And they want to level all of the buildings there. And apparently there was fighting nearby. And Hamas had an RPG that blew up a tank, and that triggered the explosion in the building. And these Israeli soldiers were trapped inside from this, controlled demolition that it hadn't happened yet.
Well, they're claiming that it's that's what set it off, right? That it was the Hamas attack on the tank, essentially. But there were the explosives were set in the building, if I'm not mistaken already, right?
Yeah,
that set the chain reaction. So, yeah. I mean, regardless of how it began, the Israeli military had set up demolition explosives in these 2 buildings that collapsed on top of 21 soldiers. And like the New York Times headline is, the Israeli military says 21 soldiers were killed in a single explosion. When you read that, what does that sound like? Like, we're talking about, there's this push to frame this as a war, right? This is not a genocide. It's a war between 2 sovereign actors, is what the Israeli military is claiming. That, it's not true. But that is what that headline enables. Like, people just scroll past that. It's just like, wow, damn, it's really bloody over there. And then it's in the second or third paragraph, apparently involving explosives placed by Israel's military to level the buildings. And they're creating this buffer zone, apparently, which is which Biden is reportedly saying you can't do that. They're doing it anyway, by the border with Gaza so that Israelis can go back to their home safely.
Meanwhile, Israel proposed a 2-month fighting pause in Gaza for release of all hostages. Hamas very quickly rejected that deal. This comes on the heels of the Hamas proposal to release all the hostages if there is a cessation of the war and they get to remain in political power in Gaza. But the amazing thing about this proposal, this 2-month proposal, it's so obvious, is that this is Netanyahu trying to drag out this process as long as he can. It was reported in Haaretz over the weekend, I think it was. Maybe it was at the beginning of the end of last week, that Netanyahu doesn't want the release of the hostages because when the hostages get released, the impetus for the war may begin to die down in Israel. And in that instance, the Israelis are going to turn their ire towards Netanyahu, and he knows that if he's out of office, he may go to jail. Now, with that said, I don't think that there's any other Israeli leader that would be less interested in continuing an attack in Gaza. But we're already starting to see major sort of like former Israeli officials say, we got to wrap this up because this isn't having the effect that it was supposed to. Here is footage of members of Israeli, the families of Israeli hostages, busting into an Israeli Knesset meeting. We don't have any type of like we have some translations here, but they busted in and protested they're not doing enough to get the hostages released.
Well, they don't want to also reveal, like, there's a good chance Israel's killed many hostages through its indiscriminate bombing campaign too, and this is also after Netanyahu survived a vote of no confidence. It was not close. It only got 18 votes against him, but it got to the floor of the Knesset still, just to add to what Sam is saying about how domestic pressures are ramping up.
There won't be a deal on the back of whom? Will there not be a deal? What right does he have not to negotiate a deal? What right does he have, I ask you? If these were your children, what would you have done? I want to assure everyone this is a protester, that I will not let this go. And I will pursue you all until you cooperate with us. Because we need to bring them all back. Now. Now. They just got into this room. Do we have the longer footage that I posted? Yeah. But we get a sense of what they're saying. But it was really pretty hectic in that room at first.
I mean, this has been the case since Blinken deleted that tweet on, what is it, October 8th or the 9th? And to be accused by supporters of the bombing campaign of not caring about the hostages in advocating for a ceasefire, when in fact, actually, it's the people that want to continue bombing that don't, has been one of the more maddening things.
Yep.
This is when they broke in.
תנו להם להגיד מה שהם רוצים. תעזוב אותו, תן לו להגיד מה שהוא רוצה.
They basically overpower. I don't have much security.
תעזוב אותו. תעזוב אותו, תן לו להגיד מה שהוא רוצה.
I mean, part of the problem I would imagine they have in terms of like security is they don't want to be on Israeli television, really, tussling these families.
Of course. I mean, meanwhile, in the West Bank, a Palestinian American 17-year-old was just shot dead.
By Israeli forces, we should say.
It was by apparently an off-duty cop, but basically, and a settler is my recollection. I'm like 90% sure of that, or at least what's being presented. So the point is just that, like, you kind of just see how there are, it's righteous, of course, that these Israeli protesters are demanding the release of the hostages and an end to the bombing so hostages can get back. But on the other side of the wall, even in the West Bank, these executions of just random Palestinian people, including a Palestinian American, where is the Biden administration in raising hell about this? But they didn't. The U.S. government didn't do crap when the Palestinian American journalist was executed as well, Shireen Abu Akleh. So there's a lot of double standards at play here, obviously.
This is an interesting exchange here on Sky News. Don't know who these presenters are, but they invited on Dr. Miriam Francois. I don't really know who she is, a journalist and a filmmaker. It was interesting just to see this play out because the U.S. and U.K. now have expanded their attacks on Yemen in an attempt to I guess, debilitate the Houthis from attacking the trade routes that they've been doing.
And they'll said they will stop when there's a ceasefire. That's what they're saying publicly. So they could the U.S. could try
That's what
that.
they've said the entire time.
Or they could bomb them.
Well, I mean, it's the U.S. is all in, and not if you're not going to call for a ceasefire when you see a wholesale slaughter of civilians, it would be bad form to do it because of inflationary pressures put on international trade routes. But the problem that I think the U.S. and the UK government have is that this is not. It is coupled to another thing that's happening that they have influence on. You cannot look at the Houthis as attacking trade routes in a vacuum, because it's not happening in a vacuum.
It's what everyone wants you to do.
But that's exactly the point. And that's what's interesting about this is that these news presenters have a tough time sort of presenting it in that way.
Dr. Francois, I mean, there are many who are saying that, frankly, the Biden administration should have acted sooner and faster, that hundreds of billions of dollars has been put at risk because the Houthis have held this area in the Red Sea at ransom.
Sorry, so just let me get this straight, Yalda. So we are bombing one of the poorest countries in the world that has been under a humanitarian blockade. There has been famine. These people have been decimated, and we are bombing them because a couple of guys in dinghies in support for the Palestinians who are having a genocide committed against them. They're objecting to that, and we're bombing them. Come on now. I mean, this is just an insane world for us to even think. I'm so sorry your Amazon packages are delayed. I really am. Like, I wish mine came on time. But, genocide, guys, genocide. There are 2 mothers a day dying in Gaza right now. It's 109 days into a conflict in which a humanitarian crisis has been declared to the world day day out.
By the way, Dr. Francois, there are many who are Yemen watchers who monitor and follow the Houthis who say this is doing wonders for their branding, actually, that it isn't just the Palestinian cause that they're focused on.
So pause it. I mean, I have no doubt that the Houthis, and I think, everything I've read suggests that they're having a hard time governing, and that this is engaging in a conflict like this drives
their legitimacy.
Their legitimacy and sort of nationalistic fervor. Yes, that of course that dynamic exists in every time a government launches a conflict in some fashion. But the bottom line is, this was all to be expected. The reason why the Biden administration moved in naval ships early on was because they knew this conflict has the ability to expand. And so you have a choice. You either roll with the expansion of that conflict, or you try and end the conflict. And the Biden administration has made their choice, which is we're not going to try and end the conflict.
I mean, I'm sorry, but why does that give the Houthis more legitimacy? Why? It's not just that they're engaging. It's not just that they're engaging in a war or in a conflict. It's the fact that they're showing solidarity for the Palestinian people. When you see how other Arab countries and people in those nations feel about Israel's genocide of the Palestinian people, you can understand why the Houthis domestically might see it as a prime opportunity for them to show and thumb their nose at U.S. imperial power, which I hate to break it to white British and American anchors in this country who are cozy and make millions of dollars. But the United States is not viewed with much reverence in the region that we have been indiscriminately bombing for decades and decades and decades, and that Israel is like a colonial outpost for our interests in that region. Yeah, they don't have a ton of legitimacy there, or we don't. So the Houthis doing this is actually completely logical, even though it's painted as some sort of Arab barbarism. It's if the genocide was happening in our backyard to one of our allies or other people. I mean, look at how we responded in solidarity with sending weapons to people in Ukraine because Russia is in opposition to us. This is how geopolitics works. But white people get to be rational actors on the international stage, and then brown people or Arab people or Muslim people, they're all irrational.
The people that are supporting
Disrupting
the bombing
trade.
of the Houthis, yeah, it is disgusting that people are saying, well, what about the might be inflation or rise in shipping? You know how many people are starving in Gaza right now?
500,000.
It's absolutely disgusting. To be called like pro-terrorist or something like that, kiss my ass.
I mean, let's put it this way. If the Houthis were disrupting international trade routes and were firing on civilian vessels, and whether you think they're sincere or not in their,
Right.
I mean, which is just a bizarre way to look at this, whether you think they're sincere or not, if they were doing this in the total absence of this Israeli assault on Gaza, if there was nothing else going on and they were doing it because they were they're trying to drive their own sort of like public perception, the quality of their public perception in Yemen, no one would be talking about it.
Yep.
If the U.S. was bombing, we would be like, wait, we shouldn't be doing this. Boom, that would be the end of the story. Like there would be nobody. You'd
have a coalition being able to be built because the Houthis are just acting out for some reason against shipping.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's the thing is that the whole point is that the Biden administration have completely opened themselves up to this expansion of this regional conflict because of their failure to in any way attempt to rein in Israel. Because it is not an attempt to say we're sending a letter to your manager and we just put to whom it does concern. I mean, that is the point. Continue on with this.
Who are Yemen watchers who monitor and follow the Houthis, who say this is doing wonders for their branding, actually, that it isn't just the Palestinian cause that they're focused on.
So call a ceasefire now and end the positive branding. If you want to stop the Houthis doing what they're doing, then call a
Do you genuinely
ceasefire
believe
right
that
now.
the Houthis would stop doing what they're doing?
They have literally said that that's why they're doing what they're doing. They have not previously blocked those routes.
Pause it real quick. You know, I'm not going to take it off, but like the idea that America and Britain have the ability to vet others for sincerity in this sort of conflict is ludicrous.
All state actors that are white and are powerful or rational. State actors that are poor and Arab. We have to assess their moral character.
Yep.
The reason except this one. So yes, I do. And I also think the West needs to start to understand that you cannot just go around playing cowboys in the world. There are consequences to your actions. You cannot just go around bombing people's countries, ignoring international law and expect no repercussions. For every cause, there is a consequence. And just because you don't like a couple of guys trying to resist,
I mean, these are now prescribed terrorists.
Sure, according to Western governments.
Well,
they are
also
terrorist
according to the
governments,
Yemeni people.
Yeah, which is a Saudi-backed government, which is essentially our.
But the Yemenis who live, under Houthi rule talk about the fact that this group continues to terrorize them as well.
Yeah, I'm no fan of the Houthis, apart from when they're blockading in favor of a ceasefire, which should have been called a long time ago. 55,000 people are dead in Gaza right now. There are over 60,000 people injured with no access to food, water, aid. How dare we have a conversation about trade when there are children right now being treated without anesthetic? Well, there are things that require us to make some sacrifices, and this would be one of them.
They do have the global economy, global markets hostage.
Good for them.
Bill Browder.
Good for them. Ceasefire now. Ceasefire now.
We're going to have to leave it there.
That guy had a great retort. But here's the point, is that if you are one of those people who believe that the responsibility for the tens of thousands of civilian casualties in Gaza is squarely on Hamas, and not a function of Israel, then that same logic makes it impossible for you to blame the Houthis for them firing on these civilian vessels. I mean, the same logic would make it impossible because, of course, the Houthis are doing this. It's in their best interest to do so. That's the argument, right? That they're being opportunist. Okay,
great.
Well, take the opportunity away from them.
If everything just runs in such a if there is no such thing as like a moral culpability, but A happens, then B necessarily has to happen, C necessarily has to happen, then if you're going to apply that type of logic to the wiping out of like housing and resources and hospitals and universities and the desecration of cemeteries in Gaza to Hamas, there's no agency by Israel. How do you not come to the same conclusion with the Houthis?
Why just think for a second, just have empathy for 1 second. Why do you think the Houthis or people in Yemen or in the Middle East don't like Israel or the United States? Why? It's actually incredibly rational because of decades of bombings. Yeah, I mean, we're back to that. We are back to that.
Yeah, it's insincere. It's all just because they hate the West for our freedoms. We're back to Newsweek post like a week after 9/11.
Do you support the Taliban?
They're lying when they say they don't care
Al
about
Qaeda.
You think pirates care about Palestinians? They're pirates, not Palestinian lovers.
Instead of looking at the structural issues of the world superpower and the way that we've conducted ourselves, I would like to spend my time assessing the moral character of extremist groups or just like militant groups that come up and crop up because of our actions in the region. Like, this is the arrogance, honestly, of Western empires, and it's complexity for us in our indiscriminate actions, but black and white moral assessments of terrorism on the other end. And in the end, all you are is a racist. That's wild. All you are.
It's wild to see how many people, even on the nominal progressive left, the second we start bombing somebody, the rationalizations come out and the pathologizations of the left come out, and all of a sudden it's, oh, you're not grown up enough to understand why we are all of a sudden throwing missiles at another population instead of just giving the missiles to the Saudis to do it.
One final story before we go into the fun half. Apparently there was an Israel-EU meeting on the future of Gaza. And the Israelis have, it gets reported like they have no plan for Gaza. They seem to have a plan for Gaza. And that is to make it as life as impossible as it could possibly be for the Palestinians living there. Their plan is to basically level what is there, to get rid of all the cultural institutions, to get rid of the health institutions, to get rid of all these things and maintain either military control by having military there, or just, again, control it in the way that they've been controlling it as an open-air prison. But at this point now, with this level of starvation, they're exerting the control by withholding things like food and water and whatnot. The EU met with Israel's, ambassador to the EU, Joseph Borrell Fontelles, the EU's top diplomat, met in Brussels and said that it appeared that the two sides were having two different conversations.
Are Palestinians in this conversation, by the way?
Of course not.
No? Okay.
European nations were resolute that sustainable, lasting peace must include Palestinian statehood, an option that Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel has doubled down on opposing in recent days. Israel's Foreign Minister Yisrael Katz presented to Europeans a plan involving an artificial island off of Gaza's coast. So the plan, after the closed-door meeting with European Union ministers in Brussels, I just found this laughable.
I feel like this sort of stuff feels like it's meant to be insulting.
Oh, it is. It is meant to be like, let's just do anything and stall here and just show how feckless everyone is until they actually decide to get serious with us, and they won't. At the closed-door meeting with European ministers in Brussels, Mr. Katz, this is incidentally from the New York Times, Israel's foreign minister left officials confused when he screened a video which dates to at least 2017, about a pet proposal of his to create an artificial island off the Gazan coast. He said it could be used to inspect cargo and passengers arriving by sea into the territory. This is according to an Israeli official and 6 European diplomats and officials familiar with the meeting. Afterward, Mr. Borrell said the island plan, this didn't have much to do with what we were discussing. So the point is, there is no partner for peace on the Israeli side. They show up and they just do this basically joke presentation as a way of basically telling the EU, go F yourself. Our one negotiation, we will have our, prison checkpoint. We're going to build an artificial island to do it.
Call it Gaza Traz.
It's sort of like
Elon Musk can actually send them to Mars.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I mean, it's our land, so.
I'm going to seastead for the Palestinians. Get Peter Thiel involved.
I'm just, thank you for U.S. presidents over the past few decades for your appeasement of this fascist far-right government. I mean, it's not just Joe Biden, and he is Genocide Joe, blood on his hands, whatever. But, they have led us to this moment, the United States government and UK governments collectively.
You could tell quite a story about all the obviously Clinton, but Obama taking pictures with Saeed and knowing chapter and verse on the Palestinian struggle, and then,
reversing.
Capitulating the way he did, and despite Netanyahu making him the big bad anyway. I mean, it's horrible.
All right, we're going to take a break ahead into the fun half of the program. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member by going to jointhemajority.report.com. When you do, you not only get the free half free of commercials, you get the fun half. You can IM us. We always could use members. Certainly as of late, it's been a little bit of a dry spell in terms of folks having some financial issues. And
we should figure out some kind of members only, app only content.
Yeah.
Really?
We definitely need to do that more on the app. I was looking at the Dark Vault stuff. If we can find that, release some of those. But your support really makes this show possible. You can become a member. Join themajorityreport.com. Also, don't forget Just Coffee. JustCoffee.coop. Fair trade coffee and hot cocoa. And you can get the Majority Report blend. Use the coupon code Majority. You get 10% off. JustCoffee.coop. Emma, ESVN.
Yesterday, Bradley and I went into the divisional round this weekend. What an incredible weekend of football. We spoke a little bit about what the root of the Bills' problems are. We talked a bit about the 49ers and if there's concern for them going forward. The Lions' incredible victory. The Ravens being dominant. YouTube.com/ESVN show. Really, I mean, for me at least, these NFL playoffs, the 4 teams left, best 4 teams in football, and I'm not a Mahomes hater. I don't even care if he gets his 3rd ring. He's that great. So fun times ahead.
There's also a fun thing going on with ESVN as far as data analysis and betting and psychology, because if you look at both Bradley and Emma's results, not great.
Not great?
I think if everybody did that. And,
hey, I went 2-1 last week, folks. I went 2-1.
Yeah, well, Emma has her own mental calculations, but the numbers show that it's not been good over the course of this year, and maybe people shouldn't be betting money on stuff. But anyway, even people that know a lot lot about sports.
Well, it's not money. It's a competition between us. No one.
I don't put money on my bet.
No one here would ever bet money. That's disgusting.
The 7-21 Emma Vigeland goes up against the 9-18 Bradley.
That is that's slanderous. It was not true. Not true.
Matt really bringing it today.
It's funny.
Yeah.
I'm very anti-betting, so that's also the other
I
thing.
mean, that's the clash. Yeah, I understand. You're right. Like, you ended up being right, because this gambleification of sports, it's a joke. Everything you watch is now like, yeah.
Hollowing out everything. Yep.
Yep.
Left Reckoning.
Oh yeah. Well, first, Jamie Peck, formerly of the Majority Report, has a show out, and we have the thing up here. I'll put that up. Crime Wave. It's a secret show in Los Angeles, but if you go to this Eventbrite link, you can get it. It's on Thursday, January 25th. Comedy 9 to 10 p.m.
This is in LA.
Dance party to follow. So yeah, that's in LA.
Fun.
So if you want to have some fun in LA, I mean, I think New York, maybe we do a little bit less fun than LA does, but secret dance.
What are you talking about?
I mean, I'm just old. I'm washed.
Well, we're just more miserable here.
Yeah,
But that's-
exactly.
That's
Tell me
okay.
about it. Yeah,
secret
check that
dance
out.
parties.
We will put a link to that in the podcast and YouTube description.
Tonight on Left Reckoning, Seamus Malefik-Zali talking about the Houthis and Biden bombing them. So check that out. He's based in Beirut, so we're talking about Gaza as well, generally. So check that out. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning.
All right, we're going to take your phone calls, 646-257-3920. I will be taking the voicemail off just after we get back from the break.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun.
Are you ready?
Who sent us
this? Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males,
psych, fuck them.
Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. All lives matter.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock